Check it out, guys. It is the brand new trim Subaru Outback Wilderness. A tougher, more off-roady, more gritty version of the Subaru Outback SUV. Now, even though this is an all-new trim, this is part of the 6th generation Subaru Outback that has been with us since the 2020 model year. And it is one of 8 Outback trims. Are you ready for this? There's the base trim, then the premium, then the limited, then the touring, then the Onyx Edition XT, then this Wilderness, then the limited XT, and finally the touring XT. With so many trims to choose from, what distinguishes the Wilderness from the rest? Well, quite a lot actually. First of all, this does get the more powerful of 2 engines offered, a turbocharged 2.4 liter engine. I'll talk about more of that in a second, but you also get more ground clearance, 0.8 of an inch more ground clearance than the other Outbacks. With that ground clearance, you also get more suspension travel and a different suspension tune to go with that suspension travel. You get 17-inch wheels with 65 series rubber, and that rubber is all-terrain Yokohama Geolandar tires. You also get different front and rear bumpers, and those are not just styling choices. Those actually improve the approach and departure angles of this car for when you do want to go off-roading. You'll also get a front skid plate for the same purpose. You get dual mode X mode, which is kind of like this weird quasi sort of kind of like transfer case-ish type of thing, where basically it adjusts the CVT so you get more engine revs for vehicle speed, so you get more torque out of the system that way. And the dual mode part means that you have different settings for different types of terrain. And finally, you get some super beefy roof rails. Now, when it comes to the visual cues of this car, in a moment, I'll show you around the car and show you the visual differences between a standard Outback and this Wilderness as well. So clearly, that's a lot of stuff, and none of it's free. A base Subaru Outback costs $28,320. A Subaru Outback starts at $38,120, and then my test car has a $1,845 optional package, so it comes just under 40 grand, $39,965. Okay, before I go any further, this is a good time to show you around and inside the car, so let me show you. All right, everybody, let's take a closer look at this 2022 Subaru Outback Wilderness. Now, this particular one is painted in geyser blue paint, which is a unique color for the Subaru Outback Wilderness, and a very, very pretty blue, it has to be said. Now, you might be curious, visually speaking, what makes this a Subaru Outback Wilderness? Well, let me show you. You've got 9.5 inches of ground clearance instead of the usual 8.7 for a Subaru Outback. 17-inch wheels with Yokohama Geolandar all-terrain tires. You get a unique grille and unique front bumpers, hexagonal fog lights, matte black hood decal, cladding around the wheel arches, beefy ladder-type roof rails that Subaru claims can handle up to 700 pounds of static load, modified rear bumper, and of course, lots of Subaru Wilderness badging. So generally what you get is a slightly lifted, slightly beefier version of the 6th generation Subaru Outback that's been with us since the 2020 model year, and that's seriously not at all a bad thing. Looking at the car in profile, you definitely get more of a station wagon shape in terms of like familiarity, but Subaru and the government think that this is in fact an SUV, and it is tall enough to play the part and actually has ground clearance that rivals and actually is better than many crossover SUVs. I'll put the dimensions of the car on the screen right now so you can check that out. And if you want to take a look at all the specs of this thing, I have those in the description. Looking at the car in back, it's pretty straightforward, but one thing that Subaru does that I quite like is you've got dual exhaust tips here and here, and there's no cladding or anything fancy about them. That is just the actual exhaust. Let's take a look inside the car. In back, you've got this nice, thick, rubberized Outback floor mat right here, and lots of space. As you can see, this goes way deep inside, and this nice privacy panel right here. And you've got some hooks right here that tuck away and just snap into place. And if you want to fold the seats down, that's super easy. Just pull here and here and remove the privacy panel. And now you have a generous amount of storage space. I will put the figures up on the screen right now so you can see what they are with the second row up and the second row down. Let's check out that second row. This being kind of a mid-size sedan car size, we've got a pretty generous amount of room back here. Again, we've got these nice wilderness rubberized floor mats to look at, and it's got this nice little imprint of some nice rocky landscapes right here. That's cool. And as you might be able to tell even just from looking, we've got pretty darn high seat bottoms, so I have lots of thigh support, and I also have plenty of leg room, probably a good 6 inches, and enough headroom as well, and that's despite having a moonroof up front, and I am 5'11" tall, or 181 centimeters. In addition to that, we have auto up-down windows, power windows, and heated seats in back for the 2 outer rear passengers, and 2 charge ports right there. Looking down, you can also catch a glimpse of this wilderness copper stitching right here, and you can see it in the back of the seat here as well, and the armrest up front there too. Finally, if you don't have 3 passengers in back, you do get an armrest and cup holders. Always nice. Let's take a look up front. As you look up front, you'll get more visual cues that this is in fact a Subaru Wilderness. One of the less subtle ones is the fact that it says Subaru Wilderness right there. It also says it down here on the also rubberized floor mats. It is embossed into the headrest right here. You also have this copper metal right here, and more of this copper stitching in here and on the seats down here. Lots of cues that this is in fact an Outback Wilderness. Oh, and let's not forget these aluminum alloy pedals as well. You do of course get power windows with auto up down right here, power locks, side view mirror adjustment, bottle holder, and space for maps and those types of things right there. You do have the usual seat adjustments right here, fore aft, seat back, and lumbar support, which I always appreciate. Here's a button to open and close the liftgate from the front and a few other things. Also, you do have tilt and telescoping steering. It is manually adjusted right here. The seats themselves have nice bolsters up top and decent bolsters in bottom as well, so you do get a very nice settled into feel with the steering wheels. And this material is called StarTex, which is a water repellent upholstery, so that's also good for like off-roading trips or whatever. You get a little muddy, you don't have to worry as much about this sticking to the upholstery. Push button start. You do get 2 real gauges, speedometer on the right, tachometer on the left, and a nice small screen right here for different information. You do have paddle shifters, upshift and downshift. Despite the fact that this is actually a CVT transmission, it has 8 fake gears but 0 real gears. This is a portrait style 11.6-inch center console touchscreen, and it does have some buttons surrounding it, real volume knob and tuning, and heat adjustment for the HVAC controls. It is a dual zone climate control system, but a lot of things are actually done like a tablet, like an iPad. For example, heated seats require pressing the screen and playing with it right here. This does get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but it is wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and you do have USB ports and an auxiliary plug right here to use such things. It is an electric parking brake, and you do have a pretty standard looking Prindle, but you also have, because it's a Wilderness, a 180-degree front view camera. So if I press this button here, and then I get a very nice front view of what's approaching the car, and that's very helpful when you're going up steep inclines and declines, say you're not on a paved road. Now, most Subaru trims do get this larger 11.6-inch screen, but this particular one has the optional navigation system, and that's part of a $1,845 package. You do get nice deep cup holders right here, and you do actually have options for the lower storage here as well. There's 2 dials right here. So if I push on the right one, you get the deep well right here and an additional charge port right there. But if I push on the left one, you get this shallower tray right here. And there's what I mean, right, left. Looking up, we do have a sunglasses holder and some lights right here. And here's the operation for the moonroof, but the privacy panel is a manual setup. Now, this center console touchscreen has lots and lots of options, but I did want to point out a couple. car info is a fun one because it gives you attitude of the car, fore, aft, and also side to side. So that's roll, pitch, and dive right there. You also get a sense of what the chassis is doing right here. That's part of driving statistics, but you've also got advanced package, and that gives you a sense of the different systems that are on or off or functional or whatever, and also maintenance, what the circumstances are with various parts of the car, engine oil life, oil filter life, etc., etc. Anyway, lots of cool stuff to go into. I'm just scratching the surface of this center console touchscreen, but let's get back to the drive. Neat looking car, right? Now, powertrains. As I said, you get the more powerful of two engines. Instead of the naturally aspirated 2.5 liter flat 4 engine with 182 horsepower and 176 pound-feet of torque, you get a 2.4 liter turbocharged engine that makes 260 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque. So Subaru calls that a boxer engine, and boxer refers to the fact that it is not an inline 4-cylinder, rather a flat 4 or horizontally opposed 4-cylinder engine. That means that the cylinders are facing the opposite sides of each other like that, as opposed to being in a line straight up and down. That power then channels through a continuously variable transmission, but as I just showed you, this is a continuously variable transmission with paddles and 8 pre-described locations on the cones, so you get what feels like an 8-speed automatic transmission. But this is a CVT, and in a minute I'll show you, when you just peg the throttle and keep it there, the engines climb and just stay there as you're building speed. So it is clearly, definitely a CVT. And probably no surprise at all to most of you that the power then goes to all 4 wheels. This is, of course, an all-wheel drive vehicle because A, it's a Subaru, and most Subarus are, but B, it's called Wilderness on top of that, so of course it is, right? But nothing is truly for free, and you are paying for all this equipment in terms of fuel economy. Fuel economy is not as good as other Outbacks because of the all-terrain tires and the higher ride height and those types of things. You get 22 miles to the gallon in the city, 26 miles to the gallon on the highway, 24 combined. Those are not great numbers when you consider some of the other cars of this size out there, but when you add the off-roading prowess and those types of things and the strong roof rails and all that, those fuel economy numbers start getting more respectable. All right, I've talked plenty about what this powertrain is. Let me show you how well it works by showing you how this car accelerates. All right, everybody, time for a quick acceleration test. See what this turbocharged 2.4 liter can do. 260 horsepower, 277 pound-feet of torque. Coming to a complete stop. Bit of brake torque. And off we go. Yeah, I've played around with it a little bit, and you don't get much of an aggressive launch no matter what. But once you get moving, you get moving. So this is a CVT transmission. We're just kind of stuck in the high revs. But yeah, we've got good pull from this thing. Considering our weight to power ratio of 15.1 to 1, that's stout. That's totally respectable acceleration. It will not blow your socks off. But yeah, you'll never be in anyone's way either. Completely fine. Not bad, right? So even though the name itself implies otherwise, I bet that the vast majority of these cars will spend the vast majority of the time on paved road, and once you know it, sometimes those roads have corners. Let me show you how well this car handles. All right, everybody, time for a quick handling test. I do have the stability control off, and I'm in the normal driving modes. Otherwise, this is not set up to be an on-road handler, but obviously we'll still be on the road, so let's see how it goes. Yep, good pull from the motor. Not much grip, but really easy progressive slide there. Occasional beeps about lane departure. You know, shockingly little understeer in this thing. You know, because we have the all-terrain tires, we don't have a lot of grip, and that makes it easier for the balance of the car to be a little bit more neutral. It's actually kind of fun. Yeah, so we're getting a lot of body roll and not a lot of grip. The steering is pretty light, not much of any feel, but the limit's easy enough to get to and feel and play around, so yeah, it's basically what I expected. Not scary in any way. It's stable and all that kind of stuff. And again, I have the stability control off. So overall, competent and what you'd expect. Yeah, it's a pretty big, softly sprung thing with a lot of sidewall and tires that are good for off-road, but that doesn't tend to lend to great on-road grip, right? So that kind of went as expected. But the good news about that is that does make for a very pleasant ride, and that includes on the road I'm on right now, as well as the interstate. Let me show you that right now. All right, everybody, time for a quick freeway test. And let's not waste any time getting on the freeway. This Subaru Outback Wilderness does have adaptive cruise control and lane centering and all these kinds of things, and we are going to have all of that stuff on while we're on the interstate, but I'm also going to pay attention to wind noise and road noise and see how that goes. Cruise is set at 75 miles an hour, and we are going right around 2,000 RPM thanks to this CVT transmission, which these days is just a little bit below average. It's been really nice to see the smaller displacement engines really be able to have lower RPMs on the interstate, because you really don't need much horsepower to maintain interstate speeds. So it's nice to see them not working so hard. And as a result, this engine is largely in the background. Road noise from these Geolander tires, these Yokohama Geolander all-terrain tires, is also quite good. I'm impressed that we're not getting more noise from them, considering that they're not touring tires or all-season tires. So that's a nice surprise as well. Wind noise is a little bit on the high side for a small SUV or a station wagon or whatever you want to consider this thing, but it's certainly not outside the norm. It's just not top of the class. All right, I'm going to let go of the steering wheel just to see if it follows the curve. Yeah, there it goes. Not great, so it's not staying perfectly in the center of the lane. It's kind of seeing the edges and then getting you back into the center, and then I just got to warn you to put my hands back on the wheel. But yeah, generally works well, and it's not aggressive about it. You know, these are subtle changes. You don't get kind of any weird jerks in the wheel, and I'm not getting any weird tugs on the wheel as I drive down the road as well. Steering wheel is perfectly pleasant to hold on to. The material is nice and all that, and the seats are quite comfortable. I'm very happy with how I feel in the seats. I do have lumbar adjustment. That always makes a big difference for me. And yeah, so this is a perfectly pleasant highway cruiser in most regards. Maybe just a little bit quieter wind noise would be helpful, but otherwise I'm quite happy with this and could easily soak up a lot of miles. You know, the 26 miles to the gallon, that's a little bit lower than you'd expect, but again, with tires like this and the ground clearance that we have and the off-road capability that we have, I think it's actually pretty competitive. Okay, time to talk safety. Every modern car has all kinds of different safety systems, and more, they also have catchy names for those safety systems, and Subaru is no exception. This one is called EyeSight Drive Assist technology, and it is the usual battery of systems that you get to assist with the driving. And I'll put that list on the screen right now so you can see what we're talking about. All right, now we can get to the more fun stuff. This is an SUV with legitimate off-roading credentials. The ground clearance of the Subaru Outback is actually better than a lot of crossover SUVs out there, and this is another 0.8 of an inch better than that. So genuinely respectable. So that and the modified bumpers I talked about earlier leads to an approach angle of 20 degrees, a breakover angle of 23.6 degrees, and a departure angle of 21.2 degrees. Now, of course, you're not going to put any Jeep Wranglers or Ford Broncos to shame with those numbers, but they are respectable and also, of course, better than the standard Subaru Outback. Moreover, you do have that dual mode X mode drivetrain trick, so you can get a little bit more torque multiplication, a little bit more muscle to get out of low speed stuff. And Subaru claims that this will ascend 40-degree climbs on dirt roads, and that's pretty impressive for something like this. And I can actually do more than just tell you about that, because I actually drove this car several months ago at an off-road park that Subaru invited me to. Let me show you a little bit of that video now, and if you want, there'll be a link there so you can watch the whole thing if you're interested. I am on a trail, an off-roading trail, and it's because Subaru wants you to know that the 2022 Outback Wilderness can do proper off-roading. All right, so now it's time to go up a 40% grade, 40% gravel hill grade. And I think I'm just gonna go because this looks mighty steep. Oh my God, I don't like the feeling of this. Where am I supposed to go? Okay, and now I'm going down, and it feels like I'm going straight down. Feels like I'm going on a gravel roller coaster in slow motion, and holy God, it's remarkable how little you can see out of the windshield when you're doing these things, as opposed to looking at the front view camera. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm not the off-roading guy, and I think this is probably just clearly displaying this, because this is probably, for most people, pretty tame stuff, and for me this is absolutely plenty. Pretty cool, right? And there's actually another benefit with having a sturdier car and more kit like this, and that's towing. This Subaru Outback Wilderness can tow up to 3,500 pounds. Now, that's not huge numbers or anything like that, but that does get you into some pretty decent recreational equipment. That would be a small camper, that would be a snowmobile or two, a couple of jet skis, a couple of motocross bikes, those types of things. And it's actually the exact same amount that the all-new Mazda CX-50 can tow, just for comparison purposes. So put it all together, and what do you have? You have a small wagon-like SUV that can do a whole lot and can actually take you farther away from paved roads than you might expect. You also have a unique looking car with several features that stand out even from another Outback, let alone other cars on the road. This thing is also very distinctly Subaru. You have that Subaru flat four sound. You have that Subaru look. You have the Subaru all-wheel drive and all those things. This is very Subaru on the inside as well. So if you're into Subarus, this car will definitely be right up your alley. But even if you're not, this car offers a very diverse set of capabilities that give you lots of options of ways to spend your free time. And ways to spend your free time might be the best gift of all that this car gives you. I'm Robin Warner. Thank you for watching. And if you are still watching, I'd really appreciate it if you like this video and subscribe to my channel. Those things really do help me out quite a lot. Okay, goodbye. Time to go. Those aren't gears.